Everyone, I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night.
We've had the COVID vaccine for more than 6 months, and we're still talking about vaccine hesitancy. So what's it going to take to convince people it's in their best interest to get the shot? Well, according to one study, the governor should stop talking about it.
For the people that we're trying to get through right now, there are better messengers than the governor herself.
And speaking of the governor, it turns out she spent the hottest day of the deadly heat wave on a retreat in wine country. Here's the story.
We'll get to that in a minute. Thanks for being with us. Hello, I'm Dan Haggerty. This is The Story. We want to hear from you, all the things you're thinking and rattling around in your head. Send them our way, and we'll assign a reporter. That's the kind of the point of this show. Our contact information is at the bottom of your screen. Use the hashtag HeyDan or email us at thestory@kgw.com. Why don't we get started? And this is our big story, as well as a bit of a mixed message, you could say. Look, top doctors and health officials have been telling us to get the vaccine since it first arrived, haven't they? They've been sharing those horrible stories of people in the ICU not being able to say goodbye to their families. They told us of hospitals being overrun with COVID patients and people being so overworked by this pandemic that they considered a new profession. And we've been told since day one that the solution to all of that, to all of our problems when it comes to COVID, is the vaccine. So you would imagine that almost everyone in that line of work would be vaccinated, right? I bet you see where I'm going with this. OHA just released the data on Oregon dentists, doctors, nurses, EMTs, and a lot more. And while some of those professions do have very high vaccination rates, others are less than 50%, less than half. And keep in mind, the shot has been available to most of them longer than anyone. As the healthcare industry continues to plead for people to get vaccinated, you can't help but notice the do as I say, not as I do dilemma. Here's Kristen Severance.
The Oregon Health Authority just released vaccination rates among healthcare workers across the state. It's the most complete look we've gotten so far at this industry. The OHA data shows about 70% of healthcare workers are vaccinated. That's about 5% higher than Oregon's general population. But according to the data, rates vary widely by license, age, and county. When you break down the vaccination rate by license type, 94% of Oregon dentists are vaccinated. Medical doctors are about 87% vaccinated. On the other end, only 50% of chiropractors are vaccinated. Out of the almost 13,000 certified nursing assistants, 43% are unvaccinated. When it comes to EMS workers, paramedics are the most vaccinated at 64%, while emergency medical responders and technicians are just below 60%. Dr. Dana Hargunani is the Chief Medical Officer for the Oregon Health Authority.
So how does it concern you when you do see some of these healthcare workers, continuing to not get the shot?
I think overall we see optimism in some of the very high rates of vaccine uptake among some of our healthcare workers. We know we still have work to do, so we will continue to keep working to make sure all barriers are reduced and that we can move this vaccination rate upward.
According to the numbers, vaccination rates vary widely depending on where you are in the state. In the metro area, Washington County is at the top, where 82% of healthcare workers are vaccinated. In eastern Oregon, the numbers are much lower. Only 43% of healthcare workers in Harney County are vaccinated, the lowest in the state.
We are in a global pandemic.
Becky Holtberg is the president and CEO of the Oregon Association of Hospitals and Health Systems. She said current state law prohibits hospitals and other healthcare providers from mandating vaccines. The OAHHS does not want a statewide mandate to vaccinate healthcare workers, but they do believe each hospital system should decide if they want to require their workers to get the shot.
If the state would change this law or create a new rule. We know that each community is different and each hospital is different. Some hospitals may choose to mandate vaccination, others would not. But it is important that the hospital and the local community have the ability to make that decision. That's what this is really about, is making sure that hospitals have tools to respond to the local circumstances in managing the pandemic and in keeping their patients safe.
I'm Kristen Severance, KGW News.
So with that, why don't we count some vaccines? Take a look at how many people have been vaccinated. More than 2.51 million Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose, according to the CDC, and that works out to be 59.6% of our total population. So that's everybody, kids and adults. Even though kids under 12 aren't eligible to get the vaccine yet, we're putting them into this count because we want to give you an idea of how much of the total state is getting the vaccine. In Washington, more than 4.77 million people have gotten at least their first dose, according to the CDC, which works out to be 62.7% of Washington's population. So it's clear there's still a lot of people who aren't getting the vaccine. But what is the best way to reach people at this point? Those people who have refused so far to get it. I talked with Pat Doris about that earlier today.
Okay, so let's talk to Pat Doris real quick. Specifically, let's start with Pat, the idea that people who are reluctant to get the vaccine aren't going to have their minds changed by Governor Brown, apparently.
Right. Well, it's kind of a Republican mindset, and they're in some of these rural areas very conservative. And so you've got the liberal governor in the liberal part of the state trying to tell you what to do. That gets folks' backs up. And she's not definitely the person who should be delivering that message, according to what the polling found for this group out of the University of Oregon. They're not saying she's done anything wrong. They think she's done a great job for the people who've been vaccinated so far. But this last mile is very difficult, and the people are tough to reach.
So did they find the best way to reach them? They're not going to listen to the governor. How can people explain to them that it's in their best interest and in the best interest of everyone for people to get vaccinated?
Well, they have a couple of ideas. One is that they think the Oregon Health Authority ought to come alongside the local county health departments, figure out who's vaccinated and who's not, and start reaching out to those people who are not, saying, what questions do you have that we can answer? They also think going door to door is a good idea. Now, to contrast that, I talked with Dr. John Hitzman, who's the Umatilla County Public Health Director. He doesn't think that's such a good idea. He thinks that if folks start showing up and going door to door, that people in Umatilla County are going to think, who are these people from the liberal part of the state trying to tell me what to do, and that they may not even answer the door. So it's tricky.
We talk about liberals, conservatives, Republicans, Democrats in a discussion about public health. So it has been so politicized. How do they navigate that? How do they separate those two when we have had public figures like the governor out in front of this and sitting alongside health officials this whole time?
Well, people like Dr. Hitzman make a good point, and that is that Donald Trump has told people that they should get the vaccine. He himself got the vaccine. And so for the folks that are worried that, it's going to be bad for their health, you look at 150 million people plus the former president who, his health was saved because of that. So that's one of Dr. Hitzman's arguments. The other is just to have respected political figures who are on the Republican side come out and say, I got the vaccine. You should get the vaccine. Dr. Hitzman told me, look, I'm a Republican and I got the vaccine. It's not about politics. It's about science. But then you also have to realize that at the end of the day, some people have made up their minds and they're on that team and they don't want their mind changed. And that's the hardest part, that there may be some people that just don't get reached. And because of that, he thinks there's a very high chance those people will get the virus.
Okay. Pat Doris, thank you, sir.
I do want to spend a little bit more time talking about the governor and a bit of a controversy surrounding her. See, apparently, on the hottest day ever recorded in Portland during a historic heat wave that killed more than 100 people across the state, she was at a winery. That's what the Oregonian is reporting. I guess it was a day-long work retreat at a winery owned by her former chief of staff. Now, her office did tell the Oregonian that the governor was, quote, in touch with key policy advisors and state agency leadership throughout the day on various issues, including heat, and that she, quote, was kept updated on heat-related issues on Monday and throughout the weekend. Now, I have to say, it's not a great look. But I am not going to go after the kind of low-hanging fruit to do the can you believe it type report. Because yes, the optics are bad, but I guess I don't think it is the same thing as, for instance, when Ted Cruz flew to Mexico during the deadly Texas ice storm. Mainly because Texas gets ice storms. I mean, it happens every year, every couple of years, and sometimes they can be deadly. While on the other hand, Oregon has never gotten that hot. So when I picture Governor Brown sipping a Pinot during the extreme heat, I don't think that it was done with insensitivity. Instead, I think it underscores exactly how unprepared and unaware they may have been, how off guard we were caught. Not only did our leaders not sound the alarm about the dangers of this heat, it kind of seems like they didn't even understand the dangers of this heat and went to a winery. I mean, look at this. The Oregon Office of Emergency Management didn't send out any press releases about staying safe in the heat until after the temperatures had cooled down and people were already dead. They're literally the emergency department for the state. And this was absolutely an emergency. But it seems they didn't see it coming, even though it was in the forecast. Okay, our team forecasted 109. Yes, it got higher than that, but 109 can still be deadly. And 3 consecutive days of triple-digit heat, which could be deadly. And 5 straight days of above 95-degree temperatures with record-breaking overnight temperatures. Now look, I know this is the part of the newscast where a lot of the viewers think that we are casting blame. We're not casting blame, but we think you deserve to have an opinion on how surprised our government may have been based on what they knew was coming.
What's the best way, you think, to define the term adding insult to injury? I don't know. How about a Portland personal injury lawyer who may have stole millions of dollars from her clients? And you asked for more of our interview with the Oregon Senate president, so we've got more from Senator Peter Courtney.
I love the legislative process. I love the institution. But the people who now play this game play it much differently than before.
When the story continues.
All right, welcome back. I always go through your questions and your comments during the break. Please keep them coming. Use that hashtag #HeyDan, and I'll answer a few at the end of the show. Meantime, I want to remind everybody about our Hey Help campaign. This week, we're asking you to consider donating, please, to the Friends of Trees for this week's Hey Help campaign. They've planted thousands of trees in neighborhoods, all right, in the city, throughout Oregon and Southwest Washington, and they've restored natural areas. If you'd like to donate, please open up the camera on your phone, point it at the QR code on your screen. You can also go to kgw.com/heyhelp. And once you're on their donation page, just select KGW in that drop-down menu there under How Did You Hear About Us in that little question. Now, for just a moment, I'd like to get back to the D's we have today and my interview with Senate President Peter Courtney, who's really been open and was very much so in a recent and very candid interview about his concerns with our state, concerns that he laid out in detail. For instance, when he said that he told his son, who's living in Montana, not to move home, and wonders if another son who lives in Portland should stay, and that he has waning confidence in knowing his grandchildren will grow up here. If that doesn't do enough to kind of set the tone of what this interview was, listen to this.
I think that's where I see the country going. I don't see the spectacular nature of our culture, the spectacular nature of our business community, the spectacular nature of the arts, entertainment. It's going to become indistinguishable after a while. We will get by. We won't hold as a country, but we won't be the dominant country, and however you want to use the word dominant.
Okay, he's in kind of a glass half empty sort of place right now. Based on our talk, I would say that it pretty much revolves around polarized politics. That was the theme I took away. Think of it this way, okay? Peter Courtney is a liberal Democrat and the longest serving lawmaker in Salem, but he's also buds with this guy. That's Fred Girod, a long-time serving conservative Republican and the current minority leader in the Senate. And they're buddies. They've known each other for a long time. Girod and Courtney, while they are friends, have vastly different political views on most topics. For instance, the last time I talked to Girod, about 2 months ago or so, he was still questioning the presidential election results. But Courtney still likes him. And both of them speak well of each other, and publicly, or at least they used to. See, Courtney said both of their bases have become so polarized that they're afraid to do so. And Courtney has even censored himself because of it.
That is not rewarded. I know what I'm talking about. We had a press person earlier today. I wouldn't answer a question because if what I said was too great a nice thing about my opposition, that would put them in a real bad situation with their base. And if Girod and I have talked about it, and Girod said something about me publicly, that'll get me in trouble with my base. Now, I never thought I'd see that, but it's true. So that changes everything. It changes everything.
I'm sure you recognize what he's talking about, the divide in Oregon, the divide in this country. It shouldn't surprise you. I mean, how could it? The Pew Research Center, they published an article in November of 2020, so not long ago, titled, "America is Exceptional in the Nature of Its Political Divide." You see, coronavirus and masks and social upheaval and the presidential race, it divided us to a scale that resembles the civil rights era or even the Civil War era. But according to Courtney, it's not just circumstantial, right, the cause of this divide. To him, it's also generational. And I get this little sense that he is feeling a bit out of date and unsure how this new generation of elected leaders can succeed.
I don't have any support in my world for making public policy the way that I was taught to make it. So I have to make my decisions as to surviving and trying to do the best I can, living with the fact that, and Girod and I have talked about this many, 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 many times. It's remarkable because he's truly a conservative Republican. I'm truly a moderate liberal Democrat. But we're both of an age that we see the legislature so differently than the groups coming in now. And so that's how I see it happening. We'll just continue, but you won't have the spectacular nature of our country that we once had. And maybe because our country really wasn't that spectacular. We never talked that much about our history, which is, painful to talk about if you really are honest about it. Very, very painful to talk about our history. Very painful. So that's too long a statement for you to try to deal with this. But to me, is the most painful question you can ask.
Listen, Peter Courtney's one of the most uncensored, honest, shoot-from-the-hip politicians I've ever interviewed. And there's more from our conversation. If you're interested in it, it's about an hour long. You can watch the whole thing right now on our website, kgw.com. For now, I want to revisit a story from way back in 2019. I know, pre-pandemic. Was there even a time? Does anyone remember this? A former Portland lawyer was accused of stealing millions of dollars from her clients. Well, now it appears that she has reached a plea deal with the prosecutors just weeks before going to trial. Lori Devaney was a well-known personal injury attorney, and prosecutors claim Devaney ripped off her former clients, many of whom suffered traumatic head injuries, by cashing in their settlement checks from the insurers. Devaney, who is facing 92 criminal charges, was scheduled to go to trial later this month, but that's now been canceled. Instead, a plea hearing is set for August 4th with sentencing in January. Let's bring in investigative reporter Kyle Aboshi, who has been following this case for a while. And Kyle, what kind of sentence are we looking at here?
Oh, really, the sky is the limit. It's up to a judge at sentencing who will hear from dozens of victims in this case who never got the money they deserve. In all likelihood, insiders assure me she will spend time behind bars. Now, additionally, she's also facing federal charges. That federal case is set for trial next month.
Now, this scandal prompted the state bar and the state legislature to make some changes. What kind of changes were made? What's going to be done to prevent this from happening again?
Right. So as a result of the Devaney case, the Oregon State Bar raised the cap on how much victims of a dishonest lawyer can get from $50,000 to $100,000. Additionally, legislators changed the law so insurance companies have to notify both the lawyer and the client when issuing a settlement. That didn't happen in the Devaney case, and as prosecutors explained, that's why Devaney was able to pocket the money.
Got it. Kyle Aboshi, thank you. Okay, so please send us your questions and your comments. Use that hashtag #HeyDan. I'm going to read a few in just a bit, but first, Oregon and Washington are helping to vaccinate sailors who come from countries where the shots are in very short supply. So we're going to finish the story on a happier note right after this. Welcome back. Now, we spent a lot of time talking about the people who are reluctant to get the COVID vaccine tonight, but there is a group of people very eager to get the shot. International sailors or seafarers. You know, the guys who come from all over the world to ports along the Columbia and the Willamette rivers. Most of them have been unable to get vaccinated in their home countries, but they can get vaccinated here. And so far, more than 1,000 have. Tim Gordon shows us how it's done, one sailor at a time.
All right, ladies, up the stairs, watch your steps.
These people are on a mission, boarding an enormous cargo ship docked along the Willamette River in Portland. There's a pharmacist in the group equipped with the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine, giving shots to seafarers who come from countries where vaccine supplies are very limited. Martin Larson with the International Transport Workers Federation organized this mini clinic.
I need to know if you have a headache, vision, dizziness, sick to your stomach, any problems, we need to know right away.
With instructions understood, the men from the Philippines get their shots. For these international workers, COVID has been tough.
During this pandemic, no vaccine, we are only here on board, so it's very difficult for us.
Without vaccine, they've been stuck on ships for longer times and unable to get off at ports because of quarantine rules. Jafet Safidra says being vaccinated here means a lot because U.S. vaccines are recognized as safe and effective around the world.
For us, it's more fortunate to have a U.S. brand vaccine just like J&J or Pfizer. So it's a great opportunity for us. So we are thankful.
This clinic is one of dozens that have been happening on ships at local ports in Oregon and Washington, thanks to several organizations and dozens of volunteers. People like pharmacist Sandy Lee.
These guys are so appreciative. Like, I feel really good for the end of my day that someone that appreciate what we given them, and they just happy to see us when we arrive.
Thank you.
You had a pretty big smile on your face when you got the shot.
Because I'm very happy.
Tell me why.
Yeah. Because when we go home in the Philippines, we're not difficult to go anywhere because we're now fully vaccinated.
And they can look forward to getting onto solid ground again when they dock at ports after their long journeys. Tim Gordon, KGW News.
All right, a couple of questions. First, don't forget about our QR code that takes you to our weekly newsletter. So all the things that happen on this show, you can't watch every night. That's fine. We'll send you that link. We'll send you an email if you sign up, and gives you the stories and kind of a rundown of what we worked on. We talked about Kate Brown going to the winery and kind of my take on that tonight. And Susan says, give the governor a break, optics or not. I'm sure they already had this retreat on the calendar. All these things basically saying that, she was in touch. Why are we kind of pointing this out? And then also Kevin said, glass houses, Dan, where were you during the hottest day of the year? So again, I'm not placing blame on Kate Brown. What I'm doing is I'm giving you an idea of how prepared we were as a state and as some of our leaders were for the heat and what it might bring. For instance, if we knew there was a major snowstorm coming, I doubt Kate Brown would have traveled out of state or done something like that. She would have been prepared for what could be chaos. Instead, it kind of, in my opinion, gives us an idea of where their heads were at as we were approaching this heat. Where was I? I was at home with my kids because my wife came in and worked and reported on the heat. And we spent about the whole week prior to that telling everybody how hot it was going to be and why they should check on their neighbors because it was going to be over 100 degrees, since we were forecasting, or our meteorologists were, 109, which would have been 2 degrees over the record. As we know, we smashed that, but 109 degrees is still potentially deadly. Thank you so much for everybody weighing in, and that's okay to disagree with that take. Completely fine. Write in, let me know what you think. Use the hashtag HeyDan. Before we leave tonight, I do want to give a big thank. Don't zoom in yet. Stop. The man who does that to me each night, his name's Jay. He helped us develop this show. This is his last night with us. He's going off to explore other adventures. Jay Sotomayor, thank you for everything, buddy. You're the best. That's the story. We'll see you tomorrow.